What's up, my people, and welcome to the channel. My name is Diamond, and this is the place that personal finance intersects with the real world to help you both set and achieve your financial goals. If you're coming from my video, the 10 tips every car buyer needs to know, then you're in the right place, because we're going to dive deeper on tip number 2, which was pay cash over financing. And we're going to talk about the pros and cons associated with both of these methods to help you make a more informed decision for both you and your family. And stick around to the end, because I'll be revealing the number one mistake that most of us make when buying a car. And this mistake can have an effect on our finances in the short term, and ultimately it can prevent us from being able to build wealth. So you definitely want to stick around for that. And I want to take this time to thank each and every one of my subscribers. Thank you for your continued support. And I invite all of our visitors to join the community by clicking the subscribe button. You can find it over here somewhere in the video. Click that link and you can join the community. And be sure to turn on your notifications so you don't miss a thing. Let's start this off with talking about paying in cash. And the major disadvantage of paying in cash is that you actually have to come up with the Benjamins. You need the C notes to be able to pay for that car. And we've all read the headlines and heard the stories about the alarming number of people living paycheck to paycheck, and the amount of people who can't afford to cover a $400 or $600 or $1,000 emergency in cash. So being able to come up with this cash to buy a car is going to be a major sticking point for a lot of people. And that's why more and more people are choosing to finance their car, and auto loan debt is on track to outpace student loan debt as the second largest debt load, right behind mortgages. Well, that about covers it for the cons. If you can think of any other cons, then leave those for me down in the comment section. And if you're thinking about opportunity costs and leveraging your money, don't worry, I'm going to cover that in great detail when we get over to financing. Let's talk about some of the advantages of paying in cash. The first one is pretty obvious, and that's it's simple and it's easy. When you want to buy a car, you give them the cash, they give you the keys and a signed title, and you're done. That's it. Another advantage is that you buy less car. Now, some people will say that this is a disadvantage, but when you think about it, if you pay in cash and you end up buying less car, what you are driving is what you actually could afford, which allows you to allocate your extra money to more important things in your life. Another advantage of paying in cash is that you don't have any payments, which gives you more flexibility and reduces your risk. When you don't have a monthly obligation, you have the ability to choose what you want to do with that money. If you want to buy a couch next month, you get to allocate that money towards the couch. If something comes up in your life, then you can reallocate that money to whatever that is. But when you finance your car and you have payments, now you have a fixed obligation that you can't get out of. Without having these set obligations, you can move these pieces around your chessboard however you see fit. The reduced risk comes from the fact, again, that you don't have a monthly obligation. So if you lose your job, your car is paid for. You don't have to worry about losing your ability to go out and find work. And even if you wreck the car, you're not worried about what's the car worth and how much do I owe and did I purchase that gap insurance? Oh God, I didn't. Who's going to cover the difference? You don't have to worry about these type of things. And when you add that to the fact that if you needed to and if you wanted to, you could sell that car. You can use that money to buy a cheaper car and get through a rough spot in your life. You really start to understand the increased flexibility and the reduced risk that you incur by paying in cash. And the last advantage that I'll mention is that paying for your cars in cash will help you build wealth. And for all of you who are thinking about opportunity costs, I promise we're going to get to that. But since you don't have payments, you now can use that money to invest. And since you end up buying less car because you are paying for it in cash, then you have even more money available to invest. And that is how you build wealth. You don't save to be wealthy. You have to invest to build wealth. Now let's move this discussion into financing. But before we do, meet me down in the comments section, and I want to know, what is your preferred method to pay for your car? Do you prefer to pay cash or do you prefer to finance it? And what's your thought process behind it? When it comes to financing a car, one of the first things that come to mind is that it helps you build your credit. And this is absolutely correct. When you finance a car, it is building your credit. But I want to peel back the curtain on this so that we really understand what we're saying and what's involved when we talk about financing a car. When you finance a car, you have an interest rate, which means you're paying interest on this loan. Now, this may not be much on your first loan. This may be a couple $100 or maybe a few thousand. But over a lifetime of financing your cars, this is tens of thousands of dollars that you're paying in interest in the name of building your credit. And when we talk about the FICO score, which is really the only one that matters because it's the most popular scoring model out there, when you look at the scoring model and how your score is calculated, it's important to understand that only 10% of your credit score is calculated based off your credit mix, meaning 90% of what your credit score is going to be is calculated based off other factors. And when you read the details on this, you will see that even FICO says that you do not need all of the available credit types to have a good score. Now, some people out there will tell you that if you want to have a great score, you need to have an auto loan, a personal loan, 2 credit cards, and a mortgage. This is just untrue. It's not in the documentation, and you can't find that anywhere. Written by the people who actually is in charge of the formula behind your credit score. So anybody who's telling you you need to pay interest in order to build your credit, I want you to run, not walk away from this person. Because I don't want you to pay 1 cent in interest in the name of building a good credit score. Here's my take on it. Here in the real world, the reality is, for most of us, good credit, high credit scores allow us to go out and finance and purchase the things we want and pay for them over time with interest. A high net worth gives you the money available to go out and buy and own the things you want without paying any interest. And I can't leave an 850 credit score to my kids, nor can a high credit score take care of me in my old age. But my net worth can, and I can leave that to my kids as the building blocks to start creating generational wealth. So I choose to focus on what's important, and that's my net worth, not my credit score. Now, moving on to the number one most widely talked about reason on why you should not use your cash to buy a car, but instead you should finance your cars, and that is opportunity cost. There's videos out there far and wide explaining this in great detail, but here's the summary. Instead of taking your $40,000 and buying a brand new car, you should invest that money over here and take out a low interest car loan, because the difference between the interest rate on your car loan and the interest you're going to make on the investment is going to yield you more money in the end. And it works like this. They assume that you have the $40,000 to invest, and then they go on to make a whole host of other assumptions. They assume a rate of return, 8%, 10%, 12%. They assume that you're going to buy a car on some reoccurring basis. They also assume that you're going to keep investing a certain amount of money each month, and each year you're going to increase that investment. Also, they assume that the car is going to go up in cost as well by a certain percent. And at the end of all these assumptions, out pops a number that says, if you kept your money invested in finance cars your entire life, you will end up with more money. And yes, mathematically, this works. You cannot argue with the numbers. This works on paper. But I raise my BS flag because you and I live in the real world. And what we know is that nothing in life is guaranteed. Things are always changing. When is the last time you had something go exactly according to your plan without making adjustments? So this idea that we're going to assume all these different factors and in the end it's going to work out is just complete BS. But what is not BS is this financed auto loan that you have over here. This debt is locked in, and you can rest assured that that bank or that lender, they're coming after you for that money. And they don't care what changed or what happened in your life. They want their money. And the people who teach this is always trying to make it seem like this is some sophisticated, sexy financial move that's used by wealthy people. But according to a recent study, only 18% of the millionaires studied, and these were actual net worth, real millionaires, only 18% carried a current auto loan, meaning 82% of the millionaires out there don't carry auto loans. So what I would do is take a page out of Robert Kiyosaki's book, The Cash Flow Quadrant, where he talks about taking your investment, using that to create the income you need so that you can use that money to go out and buy your depreciating assets like your cars. Now, when you do it this way, we're not making a host of assumptions, and we're not talking in theory. We're back to the real world because you really did take your money and use it to create what you need to go out and buy this car. Now, that is a smart financial move. Now, earlier I mentioned the number one mistake we make when buying a car, including yours truly. But comment down below and tell me, what do you think the number one mistake is? This mistake, I made it on my last car purchase and the purchase before that, and it's a mistake that I will never make again. And that's not thinking about the big picture. You see, cars is the second most expensive thing that most of us will ever buy behind our homes. And it's the largest, most depreciating asset that any of us buy. And when I went out and bought my truck, I researched the truck. I got the best price possible. I researched my loan and got a good interest rate. And the monthly payment could fit within my budget. But what I didn't do was think about how this decision was going to affect my overall financial plan. And to be honest, at the time, my financial plan was more of an outline than a detailed roadmap. But that's a conversation for a different video. My decision to buy a brand new truck was treated as a one-off decision, as if it was over here all isolated by itself. When in fact, due to the cost of cars, it most definitely will affect other things in your life. So even though I can make the monthly payment and it fit within my budget, if I would have took a step back and looked at my complete financial plan, then I would have made a totally different decision. Chances are I would not have bought that car. Here's what I mean. If I was looking at the big picture, I would have asked myself some questions about my long-term goals, like how does this purchase affect me 3 years from now or 5 years from now? Sure, you can afford it now that you're gainfully employed, but what happens if you lose your job? Can you afford that truck then? Do you have an emergency fund? And what about your other financial goals? Is this payment going to affect anything else that you want to do with your money? Now, looking back, I know if I would have been asking myself these questions, I wouldn't have bought that truck. Now, I'm lucky enough to be able to have it paid off. And if you want to see how I did that, you can check out the video on my channel. But it's paid off now. And today, I'm fortunate enough to have access to $40,000, which is due largely to the fact that I got serious and got focused and started focusing on what's important, which is my net worth, which led me to becoming debt-free, which freed up the money to start building wealth, which is the core message behind the content on this channel. Now, if I was still in the mindset of financing my vehicle, I could easily fit a $568 car note on a $40,000 car purchase in my budget. But here's a bonus. When you pay cash for your car, you're going to drive that car longer, in addition to buying less car. Out of the people you know, who drives their car longer? The people you know who finance them or the people you know who pay cash? Chances are the people who pay cash keep their car a lot longer than those who finance. If you made it this far in the video, I'm gonna go with that you received value out of it. So I'm gonna ask that you share it with a friend and let me and YouTube know that you enjoyed it by giving it a thumbs up. And since you got value out of this, I think you would really get value out of my video on the 10 tips every car buyer need to know. So you can find that here on the screen. Also, it's linked down in the comments. And of course, you can find the link in the description. Until next time, I'm Diamond. Peace.